Hello beautiful people, my name is Venti and today I'm bringing you my first and last book haul of the year 2021. Yes, you heard me right, first and last. The reason I say last is because roundabouts mid-January, after I made my second book purchase of the year without having really read too many of the books that I already own on my TBR, I decided that enough was enough and I was going to place myself on an official book buying ban. I intend for this ban to last at least 6 months, and then after those 6 months, I'm going to put myself in a sort of probationary period, which if I read 10 books on my physically owned TBR shelf, I'm allowed to purchase one additional book for myself. The hope for this is that it'll curb my bookish spending and bring my TBR down to a reasonable amount, and also that it'll make me a little bit more mindful about the types of books that I buy. I hope to mitigate things I see as failings vis-a-vis the diversity of the books that I own that I haven't read yet by reading such books from my library and placing them on the to purchase list if I find them to be books that I would otherwise have purchased were I not on a book buying ban. But either way, I believe that this process will make me a more conscientious buyer of books, and it'll make sure that my collection includes only things that I am either super excited to read or things that I've already loved and plan on rereading. I do want to clarify that this ban does not mean that I will not be acquiring any more books. There's certain books that I've already pre-ordered that obviously I will be taking and having and not getting rid of. But other than that, it's over for me. No more book purchases until roundabouts the start of July. I can do this. I think I can do this. But before I begin panicking about the concept of not purchasing any more books for myself, we have just finished the holiday season and I got some books. Some that I purchased myself and others that were purchased for me by friends and family, and I want to share them with you. So without further ado, let me show you the books that I've got. So if you've been around my channel recently, you'll know that I have recently fallen in love with the Realm of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb, starting with the Farseer trilogy. And because of the impact that that trilogy had on me and the love that I have grown for that series, I decided to purchase the entire rest of the Realm of the Elderlings trilogy. I don't normally bulk purchase series like this, but Robin Hobb has not steered me wrong in any of the books that I've read of her so far, and I've been dying to find a new high fantasy series to just sink my teeth into, and The Realm of the Elderlings is absolutely perfect. Most of the series does follow Fitz Farseer, the eponymous assassin's apprentice, who is the bastard child of the former king-in-waiting Prince Chivalry, and is forced to become an apprentice to the assassin of the king because a bastard who isn't in service of the crown does not find himself alive for very long. But I was surprised to find out that not all of the series within the saga that is The Realm of the Elderlings follow Fitz. Instead, the Live Ship Traders trilogy, starting with Ship of Magic, which I am currently reading right now, follows the Vestrit family, and they are a family of traders from a city known as Bingtown. We hear about Bingtown and Chalced and the various states that this trilogy follows a little bit in Assassin's Apprentice, etc. But in this trilogy, we get to see a different culture in a different part of the world than the 6 duchies. And while there are some mentions to the plot that was going on in the previous 3 books, the plot and the issues that the people in these books follow are so different and so varied, and I just absolutely adore them. So the live ship books include, of course, Ship of Magic, followed by The Mad Ship, and the trilogy concludes with Ship of Destiny. All 3 of these books are really hefty, and they pack, or at least the first one so far, because I haven't read the rest yet, but I plan to. They all pack one heck of a punch. I am super excited to finish this trilogy. I know it's going to break me just as much, if not more, than the original Farseer trilogy did. From there, my knowledge of the saga absolutely plummets because I haven't read even a little bit of the installments of it, but I know that after the Live Ship Traders trilogy, we get to read the Tawnyman trilogy, starting with Fool's Errand, following up with The Golden Fool, and finishing off with Fool's Fate. The Tawnyman trilogy, I know, follows Fitz again, but once he's a little bit older than he is at the end of Assassin's Quest. This is followed by the Rainwild Chronicles, starting with Dragon Keeper and Dragon Haven. These 2, I believe, were originally meant to be one book. I'm getting this from my source for all things ROTE, and that is Katie from the channel A Sea of Tomes, who I'll have linked in the description box below. You know I love Katie, but I'm always going to plug her channel. I think she's absolutely delightful, and she's been guiding me through these. And the chronicle continues with City of Dragons, and finally, Blood of Dragons. These are, I believe, the least hefty of the books, though all 4 of them together are kind of heavy, so I'm gonna put them down. As you can probably surmise based on the titles, or at least that's what I've surmised based on the titles, these books will have a lot more to do with the dragon lore, which I have super enjoyed in all the books of it that I have read so far. And additionally, the title of the quartet within the saga, the Rainwild Chronicles, alludes to a place that we have not explored too much in the series so far, but that is really intriguing to me because it is sort of like on hotbed of magic, which makes sense considering dragons, I guess. But either way, I'm super, super excited to get to this one. I guess it's a little silly to say. Obviously, I'm excited to get to it. I bought the book. I'm loving the series. Of course, I want to read it. And the final section of the Realm of the Elderlings part of this book haul, and the final trilogy within the Realm of the Elderlings saga, is the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, beginning with Fool's Assassin, continuing with Fool's Quest, and concluding the entire saga is Assassin's Fate. Again, don't know much about the series at all, except for that it follows Fitz, even older this time. I know he's like a pretty old man by the end of the series. So I'm very excited to see where his journey is going to take him, because my goodness, do I love that boy. And I hope he'll be okay, but like probably not based on historical precedent. Regardless, I am ready for this trilogy to absolutely destroy everything I know about myself. The next sort of section of this book haul will continue to be books that I purchased for myself, but this section is less new series that I've only recently gotten into but have fallen in love with, and more replenishing my collection by including old favorites. The first book I want to mention here is Abhorsen, which is the third book of the Abhorsen trilogy, beginning with Sabriel. I always say that I really love Sabriel as a series, even though I've only read the first book, but I've read the first book several times because it's just so good and I've wanted to continue for a very long time. This book, at the very least, follows Sabriel, who is an Abhorsen in training, meaning that she has the power to basically cross into this realm called the Old Kingdom, where the dead don't always stay dead and magic is free. Sabriel's father is an Abhorsen, which means that he is basically one of those people who is charged with putting the dead back to rest. He does this by using a series of 7 bells, which when rung send these dead spirits, which are sometimes malevolent, back to farther and farther circles of the world of the dead. But when her father goes missing, Sabriel has to go into the Old Kingdom and sort of take up the mantle of the Abhorsen and these 7 bells to figure out what happened to him and sort of step into her heritage as an Abhorsen. It's a beautiful story with a really, really interesting magic system that I've never seen anything like before. And it's one that I've wanted to read, but I've heard that because of the way the second book of the series ends, I'm gonna want to pick up the final immediately after and just binge the whole thing. But I finally bit the bullet and got myself a copy of Abhorsen so I can finish the series all in one. Following that, I also bought The Bitter Kingdom and Crown of Embers, which are books 2 and 3 in the Girl of Fire and Thorns trilogy by Ray Carson. This is a series that I read the first 2 books of when they came out, and then when the third one came out, I just never picked it up. And I really desperately want to both conclude this series and reread it just because it was so good in my memory. This series follows Elisa, a princess who is the chosen one, but doesn't really feel much like she's chosen for anything. In theory, she's supposed to be a font of this incredible magic, but really what she has done up until this point is play a figurehead, and at the age of 16, she becomes the wife of this super worldly king who makes so many decisions while she basically sits in her castle and does not much of anything. And she doesn't really like this fate for herself. Unfortunately for Elisa, the king is not the only person who is after her. She's being hunted by these people with a deep and dark magic, and it looks like it's going to be the end for her until a revolutionary finds and saves her, because he thinks that she is the key to actually saving his people. And for the first time in her life, Elisa has the opportunity to actually step up and be more than what the world has bargained for her to be. And it's just, I remember this series being so good and so interesting, and I want to get back into it. I want to read those first 2 books, and I finally want to read the third because the second ended on such a cliffhanger. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I do remember the feeling of, oh my God, when I finally got to it. And also, these covers are stunning, and I'm really, really excited to have these new editions and have them look as beautiful as they do on my shelves. After that, I purchased some favorites, starting with the new cover paperback version of Sight Witch by Susan Dennard. To put in as least spoilery terms as possible, Sight Witch is a Witchlands novella that makes all of the plot points in the Witchlands so far, so Truth Witch, Wind Witch, and Blood Witch, come together and make sense. I feel like it's the linchpin to understanding the entirety of the series before the series ends. This follows a character that we know from the previous books, at this point in the story, sightless Sight Witch named Ryber, as she has joined this Sight Witch convent basically, and is waiting for her turn to be called into the mountain and given the power of sight by the goddess that she has devoted basically her entire life to. But one day, all of the sighted Sight Witches are called into the mountain and they do not come back, and sightless Ryber has to go in and find out what the heck happened to them. It's such an incredibly paced, beautifully done mystery, and it's so short, but it makes all of the Witchlands make sense, and I need more people to read this series, and I need more people especially to read Sight Witch, because I've got a lot of theories that I want to talk about before Witch Shadow comes out, but I can't do that if you haven't read it. So if you're seeing this is my call to action for you to pick up the series, Sight Witch in particular, read them, and then come back and talk to me. Please, 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 please. I also bought a book that was basically the top of my books that I've read that I now want to buy list, and that is a final finished copy of The Good Luck Girls by Charlotte Nicole Davis. This is the beautiful new paperback. The story predominantly follows Aster, one of the eponymous Good Luck Girls, and these are girls that have been traded into what's known as pleasure houses or brothels to fulfill part of the debts that their families owe to the nation of Cara. It's a very fantasy take on the Wild West of the United States. Aster's been in training to be a good luck girl for most of her childhood, as has her sister Clementine. But Clementine's first night, when she's officially inducted into being a proper good luck girl, so basically an indentured servant sex worker, the man she is with gets violent with her and Clementine ends up accidentally killing him. So in order to save her younger sister's life, Aster teams up with 3 other good luck girls and Clementine and books it, finds a way to get out of there and save their agency once and for all. But it turns out that the man that Clementine accidentally killed was a little more powerful than any of these girls bargained for, and they end up basically being chased across this western landscape, and they have to do some pretty cool outlaw shit to save their lives. And basically, I love this story. I really think that it was just such a strong debut, and I'm super happy to have supported it by getting this copy of my own, even though I had an ARC before. I also finally got myself a paperback version of Lord of Shadows, the second book in Cassandra Clare's Dark Artifices series. Y'all know I'm back on my Cassandra Clare bullshit. And before I can read Chain of Gold or any of the other books, I need to catch up on the Dark Artifices, etc. And just make sure that I'm reading these books chronologically, because otherwise I'm going to be super spoiled, and I don't want to do that because Cassandra Clare's books are just so full of the sweetest of drama, and I want to experience it as firsthand as possible. Lord of Shadows is the sequel to Lady Midnight, which is the first book of the Dark Artifices. The very short of this book is that it follows Emma Carstairs, a super talented orphaned shadow hunter whose parents were killed at the end of the Great War that concluded the Mortal Instruments series. She was very young when they died and is spending her teen years not only becoming the best shadow hunter that she could possibly be, but also doing some off-the-record sleuthing of her own to figure out what happened to her parents, because their deaths were a little more mysterious than the others that happened to most of the adults during this time. The catch is that because of the war, shadow hunters and the fair folk, so fairies, aren't really supposed to interact too much. There's a bit of a cold peace going on between them, and it seems like fairies are the linchpin for figuring out what happened to Emma's family. It also follows Julian Blackthorne, another orphan who is the oldest of the Blackthorne siblings, at least the oldest sibling that hasn't been basically exiled to Antarctica. And he is doing his absolute best as still a minor child to keep his siblings from basically being sent to Shadowhunter foster care, because they are all that each other have left. Julian and Emma are parabatai, which are bonded Shadowhunter partners who have a super extreme strong bond. They're basically they're drift compatible, if we're going to use a Pacific Rim analogy to describe it. And the one rule about parabatai is that they're never allowed to fall in love. And guess what Julian and Emma do? I'm excited to see how the plot and how the character interactions are going to play out in this continuation, because I've heard that Lord of Shadows is the strongest of this trilogy, so I'm super excited to see how I feel about that. And speaking of continuations of old guard YA series that I super loved, getting a sort of revamp in the modern day, the next book I want to talk about is Winter Creep by Kristen Kishore. This is the new continuation to the Graceling saga by Kristen Kishore that I absolutely adore. There is no way at this point, being how long it's been since I've last read Graceling, that I can give an accurate synopsis for that saga, because one, each of the books in the series are standalone, so that'd be 3 different plots that I had to describe before talking about Winter Keep. 2, it's been so long since I've read them that I can't super accurately remember what happened in each distinct book. And 3, I think the things that are going to get you to read Winter Keep as a recommendation for me are the following. 1, political intrigue. 2, magic school. 3, talking telepathic foxes. 4, a super agoraphobic sea monster that has basically an eldritch snow globe that is a sunken ship with people inside of it. I'm so excited for this series. I love everything Kristen Kishore does, and I know that I'm gonna love Winter Keep, but I also know that I definitely need to reread the Graceling series before I get into it. So I guess expect a series review coming up, because I love those books so much, and there's no chance in heck I'm not going to be talking about them on here. I also purchased The Mask Falling, which is the latest book in Samantha Shannon's The Bone season series. I've not yet gone in and picked up my physical copy, but I will leave an image of it right here. How to describe a world as expansive as the Bone season. So, super quick recap. Magic and psychic abilities are real. They have been super outlawed, especially in the United Kingdom-esque area, which is now known as Scion. Just because it's illegal doesn't mean it's going to stop people from doing it, especially since psychic abilities are sort of inborn. And people who have those psychic abilities are going to form underground rings where they do this stuff because they, their existence can't be illegal. You can't make someone illegal. And 4, it's really bad for people from those little crime rings to get caught, because they're sent away, never to return. We follow Paige Mahoney, who is one of these psychics, and she has the super unique ability of dream walking, meaning she can literally go into people's dreams. It's very cool. But because her psychic ability is super rare, it means that she is actually super easy to find. Her sort of psychic signature is super easy to detect. So obviously she is caught and she is sent away. But instead of going to jail, she finds herself in a sort of penal colony run by these aliens called Rephites, who use the unlucky psychics who are captured as basically slaves. And along with one of the Rephite sympathizers who doesn't think that this should be happening, Paige starts a revolution. And the story goes from there. I'm super excited to continue with this series. Samantha Shannon is an incredibly talented author. You may know her as the author of The Priory of the Orange Tree, which blew up not too long ago, but I feel like the Bone season doesn't get nearly enough hype. So I super recommend you pick that one up if you like sort of pseudo-dystopian science fantasy. More fantasy than science, but it's really cool the way that she's built this world, and I super recommend you try it out. In closing this video, we are going to be talking about some books that my lovely friends have sent me. The first of these was sent to me by my dear friend Cara from Wild Book Garden, who I'll have linked in the description box below, and it is The Enchanted Sonata by Heather Dixon Walworth. This is a Nutcracker retelling. That is still all I know about it. I started reading this earlier, got hit with a book slump, not because of it, separately, but now I want to pick it up because I'm back on my reading bullshit, and Nutcracker retellings are my favorite thing in the whole wide world. Especially if you're adding to the Nutcracker mythos by mixing in lore from stories such as, say, the Pied Piper, which, like fairy tales that don't get retold often, getting retold is my bread and butter. So I'm super excited to finally pick this one up and talk to Cara all about it. I promise I will, Cara. The live texts are coming. We're following that up with something sent to me by my friend Katie from the channel A Sea of Tomes, who I already have linked in the description box below, so just scroll up a little bit and you'll find the link to her channel as well. The first is an actual physical copy of Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This was one of the first books that Katie and I ever buddy read together, and it was just an absolute delight. This is a sort of feel-good what could have been, written around about the time of our previous election in the United States. It follows Alex Diaz, the first son, which is I think what you call the child of the president. Anyway, it follows Alex Diaz, the son of the President of the United States, who has beef with one of the royal princes of England, a young man named Henry. And after an accident at a wedding turned basically paparazzi fiasco that leads to people speculating about a feud between the two boys, Alex basically has to do damage control and convince the entire world that he and Henry are actually friends, and it's all good because good publicity is what his mom needs as she runs for re-election. But it turns out they don't hate each other. They're just rivals to lovers, and it's a very good, cute story. And I'm very excited to buddy read it with Katie now that the political sphere of the US is slowly kind of calming down. I'm excited to just feel good without missing the future that could have been. And the final thing is sort of 3 things in one, which, yeah. And it's the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. The entire trilogy, there's 3 books in here, you know? And it's, oh God, it's delightfully floppy. The Inheritance trilogy begins with 100,000 Kingdoms, which I've spoken about on this channel before. The first book follows Yemen, who is the ruler of one of the 100,000 Kingdoms' more barbarous northern contingents. She loves her people and is doing what she can to make sure that they're thriving, when, after her mother's death, she is called into the capital city of the 100,000 Kingdoms because with her mother's death, she has become one of the heirs to basically becoming the ruler of the entirety of the empire. And like it or not, Yemen is then basically thrown into the den of snakes that is the people of this capital city and the power structures that they are all vying for. Because she's not the only heir. She is competing with 2 other people who were born and raised in this den of snakes, so might have a little bit more of an understanding of what is expected of them, and is figuring out how basically to survive this fight to the death. Luckily for Yemen, her ancestors had some tricks up their sleeves, and once, a very long time ago, her ancestors figured out how to shackle and enslave basically gods. These gods do basically the bidding of the royal class because they can't not do so. And yet somehow Yemen finds herself with the gods a little more sympathetic to her plight than they are to her family's. And they come to sort of an agreement. They will help Yemen survive this and protect her people who she loves if she will do her absolute best to figure out how to set them free. And it's, the 100,000 Kingdoms was so good. And I've wanted to continue this series for forever, but the holds in the library on my Libby app were just absolutely so long. And now I finally have them and I can finally continue at my own pace, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm also excited to get a workout every single time I pick up this book, because despite being perhaps the floppiest paperback I've ever seen in my entire life, it's heavy. 3 books at once is heavy to pick up. And with the addition of these books to my shelves, that is the end of my first and probably last book haul of 2021, and officially the beginning of my book buying ban. Wish me luck. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave me a thumbs up. And if you like me, maybe consider subscribing to my channel. I post bookish videos every weekend, and I would love to have you guys join my little booktube family. Comment down below if you've read any of these books and if you have any recommendations as to which books I should start off with. And I'll make sure to prioritize those so we can talk about them more on this channel and elsewhere. But until then, if you want more bookish content from me, all of my socials are linked in the description box below. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads. But until then, thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you with my next video very soon. Goodbye.